We've all been there, scrolling through the PlayStation Store, looking for that perfect game to give us nightmares, only to wonder if that full price is actually worth the sleep we'll lose. This list isn't about jump scares that feel cheap, but about curated experiences that deliver on atmosphere, innovative mechanics, and sheer dread, justifying every penny you spend on them. If a game can fundamentally change the way you look at dark hallways, doesn't it deserve a spot in your collection? We've compiled 20 essential horror titles on PS5 that genuinely stand out, the ones that stick with you long after the credits roll. Get ready to dim the lights, check your soundbar, and meet your next source of pure, unadulterated terror. When a franchise pivots to first person, you might worry it loses its identity, but Village proves that the Resident Evil formula can evolve without sacrificing its core survival horror DNA. The game is essentially a greatest hits album of horror tropes, blending tight action sequences with claustrophobic, resource management dread, and serving it all up with stunning visual polish on the PS5. You're dropped into a hostile, snowy environment, immediately facing off against lichens, and that's just the appetizer before you meet the internet's favorite tall vampire lady. What makes this entry essential is its masterclass in pacing and setting variety. You know that moment when you move from the intense gunfights in the village square to the quiet psychological terror inside House Beneviento? The tonal whiplash is brilliant, constantly keeping you on edge because you never know what kind of horror awaits you next. A gothic castle, an unsettling factory, or a terrifying puppet house. The gameplay loop is constantly rewarding, balancing exploration with puzzle solving and the satisfying thud of combat. Ultimately, Village excels because it doesn't limit itself to one style of horror. It constantly introduces new mechanics and antagonists, giving you exceptional value for a campaign that's rich in content. It feels cinematic, powerful, and deeply unsettling all at once. If you're looking for a blockbuster experience that delivers tension, gorgeous graphics, and a truly memorable cast of villains, this is where you start your PS5 horror journey.
It's just a local.
Have you ever wondered what would happen if the cold, hard logic of sci-fi dystopia collided with the pixelated dread of classic PS1 survival horror? Signalis is the answer, and it's a brilliant brain-bending nightmare. This is psychological horror with a retro aesthetic, a game that expertly uses its limited visual style to amplify the feeling of isolation and existential terror, proving that cutting-edge graphics aren't necessary to make your skin crawl. The experience nails that feeling of classic fixed-camera horror, but it layers on a sophisticated, melancholic sci-fi narrative about identity, memory, and the crushing loneliness of deep space. It's a game that asks you to manage both your inventory and your sanity, forcing you into combat that feels desperate and costly, not heroic. And here's where it gets interesting. The simple presentation only highlights the complexity of the puzzles and the sheer dread of the sound design. It's a masterclass in atmosphere over gore. Signalis is a testament to focused, intelligent game design. It's not long, but its dense, looping narrative and resource-starved gameplay demand your full attention. It's an essential experience for fans who miss the tank controls and deliberate pacing of 90s horror games, delivering a unique and deeply emotional gut punch that's both retro and shockingly fresh. When a sequel completely redefines the genre while respecting its roots, you know you've got something special, and Alan Wake 2 is exactly that. Shifting from the original's action-heavy thriller structure to a full-blown survival horror experience, this game doubles down on its meta-narrative complexity and creates one of the most visually stunning and genuinely unnerving experiences on the PS5. This isn't just a game, it's a terrifying interactive limited series. The core genius of the game lies in its dual protagonist structure. You switch between FBI agent Saga Anderson, investigating a cult in the Pacific Northwest, and Alan Wake trapped in the nightmarish dark place. This mechanism allows the game to maintain a constant, dizzying level of suspense. Saga's portions lean into methodical investigation and resource management, while Alan's sections feature the mind-bending plot board mechanic, where you literally rewrite the environment around you to progress. This innovation keeps the narrative engagement high and the terror fresh. Alan Wake 2 pushes the boundaries of cinematic realism, blending live-action footage and high-fidelity graphics in ways that are genuinely unsettling, creating a truly memorable experience. Its slow-burn pacing and commitment to psychological horror over cheap frights make it a profound artistic statement and an absolutely essential purchase. If you're looking for a horror game that respects your intelligence while actively trying to dismantle it, this is a must-play. What if the horror game protagonist was the monster, and the humans were the ones panicking? CARRION flips the script on the genre entirely, putting you in control of a sentient, growing mass of teeth, tendrils, and sheer biological terror. This reverse horror approach is not just a gimmick, it's a brilliant, satisfying power fantasy that's drenched in the atmosphere of classic sci-fi creature features. The gameplay centers on fluid, physics-based movement through ventilation shafts and laboratories, where you are the apex predator and the puny scientists are your prey. The sheer visceral satisfaction of tearing through a room, watching the security forces scatter, and using your evolving abilities to solve environmental puzzles is addictive. You know that moment when your small, fragile form evolves into a massive, unstoppable tentacle beast? That feeling of empowerment is the core reward loop here. It's a game that manages to generate tension, not through fear of being caught, but through the thrilling anticipation of the hunt. CARRION offers a unique blend of platforming, puzzle solving, and pure carnage, providing exceptional value for a game that dares to be different. If you ever wanted to play the role of a massive, unstoppable horror movie villain, this short, sharp, and bloody experience is perfectly tailored for you. If you're going to revisit a survival horror classic, you better do it right, and the Dead Space remake isn't just a fresh coat of paint, it's a complete, masterful reconstruction of a sci-fi nightmare. Stepping back onto the horrifyingly desolate USG Ishimura feels more terrifying than ever, primarily because the PS5's graphical and auditory power elevates the atmosphere from scary to genuinely traumatic. This is definitive, essential survival horror. The game maintains the genius of the original strategic dismemberment combat system, forcing you to target the limbs of the necromorphs rather than the body mass, which feels more brutal and tactical than ever. But the true terror comes from the new Intensity Director, a brilliant system that dynamically alters enemy placements, environmental effects, and sound cues. It ensures that no two trips down a corridor are the same, turning the Ishimura into a truly unpredictable living nightmare that constantly keeps you guessing. The technical overhaul is simply breathtaking. From the enhanced zero-G sections to the seamlessly connected Ishimura, which you can now explore without a single loading screen, the PS5's 3D audio works overtime here, making every scuttle, distant groan, and sudden bang feel terrifyingly real. For its sheer technical polish, impeccable atmosphere, and flawless execution of the survival horror formula, the Dead Space remake is a towering achievement and a non-negotiable must-have. If you took the brutal dismemberment-focused combat of Dead Space and injected it with a dose of truly stomach-churning, high-fidelity viscera, you'd get the Callisto Protocol. This game immediately grabbed attention for its sheer graphical prowess, delivering one of the most intensely atmospheric and visually detailed science fiction horror settings on the PS5. It's a game that forces you into grim, close-quarters confrontations, constantly reminding you that you are outmatched and deeply exposed. The combat system is deliberately uncomfortable, emphasizing melee attacks mixed with gravity-manipulating GRP technology. You know that moment when you're desperately trying to dodge an incoming biophage while reloading your stuttering shotgun? The sense of panic is palpable, and the execution animations are so detailed they practically demand you look away, which is exactly the point. The environment of the Black Iron Prison is relentlessly hostile, utilizing the PS5's haptic feedback to make every slam, stomp, and blow feel deeply impactful. While its focus on a specific, often one-on-one combat rhythm can be divisive, its atmosphere is undeniable. The Callisto Protocol is a technical showpiece for horror, delivering a focused campaign of intense action and genuine dread. It's a rewarding, bloody experience that fully embraces the hopelessness of its setting, making it a must-play if you appreciate beautiful terror and deeply physical combat.
Running from what you've done. Now let's go finish this.
Sometimes, the simplest tools create the deepest terror, and MADiSON proves that a haunted house, a demonic entity, and a single instant camera are all you need for an unforgettable nightmare. This is a game that leans heavily into pure psychological horror and unsettling atmosphere, reminiscent of classic found footage frights, but with its own unique mechanical twist. The core loop revolves around using an old instant camera to manipulate the environment and interact with the supernatural. The genius here lies in the camera mechanic. Taking a picture and waiting for it to develop might sound simple, but in the oppressive darkness of the house, that slight delay is a masterclass in tension building. Will the photo reveal a hidden clue, or will it show something utterly horrifying standing right behind you? This constant uncertainty keeps the player completely on edge. The PS5 version enhances this with DualSense features, making you truly feel the resistance and click of the camera shutter. MADiSON is a dense, atmospheric, and genuinely scary experience that focuses on investigative dread rather than run-and-gun action. It's meticulously designed to capitalize on player paranoia, ensuring that every flickering light and creaking floorboard has maximum impact. If you're looking for a pure, dread-filled experience centered around smart puzzles and devastating jump scares, this indie gem delivers a high-value fright.
I feel something lurking.
For a specific generation of horror fans, nothing beats the feeling of fixed camera angles, intricate mansion puzzles, and limited saving. Tormented Souls is a love letter to that golden age of survival horror, specifically the early Resident Evil and Silent Hill games, but executed with modern lighting and visual fidelity on the PS5. It masterfully recreates that intense sense of disorientation and resource scarcity that made the classic so beloved. You step into the shoes of Caroline Walker, exploring a terrifying deserted mansion/hospital complex armed with only the most rudimentary weapons and a flashlight. The game's tension comes not just from the grotesque enemy designs, but from the deliberate slow pacing and complex spatial puzzles. And here's where it gets interesting. The mechanic of shifting between two dimensions, the reality and the terrifying mirror world, is essential for progress and creates incredible environmental dread. Tormented Souls is a fantastic purist take on the genre. It doesn't apologize for its challenging difficulty or its adherence to classic genre tropes, making it incredibly rewarding for veterans. It's a focused, creepy, and expertly crafted campaign that delivers nostalgic dread without feeling dated. If you crave that specific, isolating experience of inventory management and fixed camera panic, this game is a must-own. If you've been looking for the spiritual successor to PT, the legendary playable teaser for the cancelled Silent Hills, look no further than Visage. This game specializes in slow-burn, psychological horror set entirely within a seemingly ordinary suburban house that is, of course, utterly rotten with demonic history. The PS5's Enhanced Edition makes the already photorealistic visuals even more sickeningly detailed. The core mechanic centers around your sanity. The house itself is a labyrinth of episodic terrors, and simply existing in the dark causes your mental state to deteriorate, leading to terrifying and unique supernatural occurrences. This forced interaction with light sources and environmental safety creates incredible tension. You know that moment when you realize closing the door won't stop the things in the dark, and your character starts genuinely panicking? The DualSense haptics amplify that feeling of psychological breakdown. Visage is not for the faint of heart. Its pacing is incredibly slow, deliberate, and often abstract, rewarding players who enjoy deep exploration and environmental storytelling over constant action. It's a complex, deeply disturbing experience that truly gets under your skin and stays there. For those who prioritize pure, uncompromising psychological dread and atmospheric detail, this Enhanced Edition is a defining PS5 horror title. The Medium tackles a unique narrative concept that utilizes the PS5's power to deliver a truly singular experience, simultaneous dual reality gameplay. You play as Marianne, a medium who can exist in both the real world and the spirit world at the same time, often navigating both screen-split realities simultaneously, which is an impressive technical feat that underpins the game's core mechanics. This split-screen dimension hopping is more than a technical showpiece. It's essential for puzzle solving and managing your survival. A path blocked in the real world might be open in the spirit world, and a threat in one dimension might be completely invisible in the other. It creates an incredible tension as you try to process and control two environments at once. The game is highly atmospheric, leaning into the bleak post-Soviet Polish setting with an emotional and dark narrative. While the action sequences are more restrained and focused on stealth, the Medium delivers immense value through its unique mechanical structure and mature storytelling. It's an essential experience for fans who appreciate narrative-driven horror and games that experiment with environmental physics and dimensional shifts. If you want a horror experience that uses the console's power to fundamentally change the way you interact with the world, this is a strong recommendation. When a horror series is built entirely on the concept of psychological destabilization and unreliable narration, you know you're in for a wild ride. And the Layers of Fear compilation for 2023 is the definitive way to experience it on PS5. This isn't just a simple port, it's a terrifying unified package built from the ground up in Unreal Engine 5, combining the original game, its sequel, and all DLC into one cohesive, visually spectacular nightmare. The core gameplay centers around environmental manipulation. As you walk through the painter's mansion or the actor's ship, the world literally changes behind you, creating dizzying, impossible architecture that constantly messes with your sense of reality. You know that moment when you turn around and the door you just came through is gone and the room is completely different? That's the genius of this series. The PS5's ray tracing makes the lighting effects crucial, turning simple shadows into terrifying threats. This compilation offers tremendous value, delivering multiple intertwined stories driven by deep psychological themes of obsession, creation, and madness. It's a pure walking simulator style of horror that relies on atmosphere, narrative depth, and jaw-dropping visual trickery rather than demanding fast combat reflexes. If you want a horror anthology that will genuinely make you question your own eyes, this is the current gold standard. If you find yourself asking, what if the world was designed by H.R. Giger and everything was biological, fleshy, and deeply disturbing, then Scorn is the answer, and it's a uniquely unsettling experience on the PS5. This first-person atmospheric horror game throws you into a silent, decaying world without context, forcing you to learn its grotesque rules through trial and error. This is less about jump scares and more about continuous, overwhelming revulsion. The gameplay is a deliberate blend of environmental puzzle solving and limited, uncomfortable combat. Every interaction feels alien, from the grotesque weapons you literally plug into your body to the organic machinery you must manipulate. The horror comes from the constant oppressive realization that everything around you is made of flesh, bone, and things that shouldn't move. You know that moment when you successfully solve a puzzle, but the result is something physically sickening to watch? That's Scorn's signature. It's an unapologetically abstract and ambiguous experience, and while that can be polarizing, it offers an incomparable artistic vision within the horror genre. Scorn is a must-play for its sheer visual spectacle and its successful commitment to a singular, disturbing aesthetic. If you're looking for a game that uses body horror and atmosphere as its primary weapons, this is a defining, unforgettable experience.
Scorn has no dialogue, so most of the storytelling comes from the environment. Discovering the ever-present symbiotic relationships and how things are connected.
Martha is Dead is a game that digs deep into the psychological scars of war and grief, setting its disturbing narrative against the backdrop of 1944 Tuscany. This is pure psychological trauma horror, focusing on the unraveling sanity of a young woman named Julia after she discovers the drowned body of her twin sister Martha. It's intense, emotional, and deals with heavy themes using unsettling first-person narrative techniques. The atmosphere is incredibly rich, capitalizing on the beautiful yet mournful Italian countryside to contrast the ugly horrors of war and personal tragedy. The gameplay uses exploration, simple puzzles, and photography, often using old-school film development mechanics to piece together the mystery. The horror here isn't reliant on monsters, but on the fragility of the human mind. You know that moment when you realize the lines between reality, memory, and delusion have completely blurred? That's the emotional core of this experience. This title is a strong, focused story that tackles difficult subject matter with striking visual detail and an evocative soundtrack. It's a shorter, narrative-heavy horror game that provides immense value through its emotional depth and unique perspective. For players who prioritize deep, character-driven psychological narratives that truly challenge the senses, Martha is Dead offers an unforgettable, dark journey.
Pain go away.
Today I'll be giving you a walkthrough.
Ever wanted a horror game that felt like wandering through a surreal musical album of fractured memories? Soundmind delivers exactly that, placing you in the shoes of a therapist who must navigate the disturbing, manifestation-filled minds of his former patients. It's a first-person adventure that blends survival horror tropes with clever, reality-bending level design and a surprising sense of humor amidst the terror. The core gameplay involves exploring distinct environments, each based on a patient's unique trauma, and solving puzzles to face off against a powerful, haunting entity. What sets it apart is the use of distinct, memorable musical cues. Each patient's torment is tied to a specific track, making the environment feel dynamic and reactive. And here's where it gets interesting. You gain new tools and abilities that help you fight back, giving the game a rewarding sense of progression, unlike most passive horror titles. In Sound Mind is a surprisingly long and content-rich experience that manages to balance its psychological dread with rewarding puzzle design and environmental combat. It avoids feeling repetitive by constantly introducing new settings and mechanics tied to the patient's stories. If you appreciate horror games with narrative depth, clever boss encounters, and a fantastic, unsettling soundtrack, this is a high-value sleeper hit.
Swallowing everything in its way, from crates to entire cars and trees. In this
While listed as dark fantasy, Hellblade 2 Senua's Saga is fundamentally a masterclass in psychological horror, immersing the player in a terrifying world filtered through the lens of psychosis. This game is less about fighting external demons and entirely about confronting the internal ones, delivering an experience so realistic and intense that it's often deeply unnerving. It is a stunning cinematic journey that uses the PS5's power for maximum immersion. The game's genius lies in its audio design. Senua's world is constantly haunted by the Furies, whispering, manipulative voices heard entirely through 3D audio. This auditory experience is the core mechanic, creating a persistent, claustrophobic sense of dread that never lets up. Every moment feels desperate and heavy, amplified by the ultra-realistic graphics and motion capture that bring Senua's fear and exhaustion to life. You know that moment when you genuinely can't tell if a threat is real or just a terrifying voice in your head? That is the game. Hellblade 2 is an essential experience not just for horror fans, but for anyone seeking a narrative driven by raw emotional intensity and groundbreaking use of sound and visuals. While the gameplay is deliberately linear and combat is focused, its unflinching portrayal of mental health as horror provides a profound and unforgettable value. If you want a game that feels less like entertainment and more like a deeply moving, terrifying artistic statement, this is it. Imagine a cyberpunk future where the only thing more horrifying than the dystopia outside is the digital decay inside people's minds. Observer. System Redux places you in the role of Daniel Lazarski, an observer, an elite detective who can literally hack into the minds of the dead and dying to solve crimes. This PS5 Enhanced Edition is a visual and auditory feast of futuristic dread, bringing Bloober Team's mind-bending vision to life. The core terror comes from the Dream Eater sequences, where you are plunged into the victim's final, often fragmented thoughts. These segments are wildly surreal, disorienting, and expertly designed to exploit common fears and psychological instability. You know that moment when the environment suddenly twists into a terrifying, impossible shape while disturbing glitches flicker across your vision? The PS5's enhanced lighting and visual effects make these moments of sensory overload even more effective. The game is a masterclass in atmosphere, blending detective work, stealth segments, and pure psychological breakdown, all underpinned by the incredible performance of Rutger Hauer. System Redux offers immense value by deepening the original story with new content and pushing the visual boundaries of its oppressive neo-noir setting. If you're looking for a uniquely dark, technologically driven brand of horror that forces you to question reality, this is essential PS5 viewing. Bramble. The Mountain King is the definition of dark, grotesque fairy tale horror, proving that sometimes the scariest monsters aren't demons from hell, but the creatures lurking in the familiar folklore of childhood. You play as Alla, a young boy traversing a beautiful yet deeply sinister Scandinavian wilderness, and the tonal shift from pastoral wonder to pure terror is incredibly jarring and effective. The gameplay is a masterful blend of environmental puzzle solving and terrifying hide-and-seek sequences, forcing you to use stealth against massive, truly grotesque interpretations of folkloric creatures. The contrast between the child protagonist and the sheer scale and monstrousness of the antagonist creates a constant, profound sense of vulnerability. And here's where it gets interesting. The game doesn't shy away from shocking gore and disturbing imagery, making the innocence of the setting feel like a cruel joke. Bramble is a short, incredibly focused experience that leverages its third-person perspective and scale to generate tension. It offers high value through its unique artistic vision and successful execution of an unsettling atmosphere that feels both familiar and deeply alien. If you appreciate horror that operates on the boundary between fantasy and pure dread, delivering emotional weight alongside the scares, this dark fable is worth playing. For many, Silent Hill 2 is the pinnacle of psychological horror, a deep melancholic study of guilt, loss, and the nature of personal demons. The anticipation for the PS5 remake is monumental, precisely because the original's themes and atmosphere, centered on James Sunderland's search for his deceased wife in the fog-choked town, are timeless. The goal here is to modernize the presentation without sacrificing the painful intimacy of the narrative. What makes this game essential even before release is the expectation that the PS5 will bring the suffocating atmosphere and creature design into brutal, high-fidelity detail. The horror has always stemmed from the manifestation of James's subconscious guilt into the town's geometry and its terrifying inhabitants like Pyramid Head. You know that moment when the oppressive static radio sound means a monster is near, but it feels like the threat is coming from inside your own head? That dread is what we expect the remake to amplify. A successful remake will deliver immense value by making the narrative and thematic masterpiece accessible to a new generation, translating its iconic symbolism and emotional weight into a modern gameplay structure. If it can maintain the slow, deliberate pacing and psychological depth of the original, while leveraging the PS5's immersive capabilities, the Silent Hill 2 remake will instantly become a definitive horror title. While shrouded in mystery and only seen in brief, disturbing glimpses, Silent Hill F promises a radical yet compelling departure for the franchise by setting its horror in a beautiful, decaying 1960s Japan. The horror appears to revolve around grotesque, beautiful decay, where the environment is overgrown with fleshy, vibrant mold and impossible biology. This shift in location and aesthetic suggests a new kind of terror tied to folklore and hyper-real body horror. The game is set to deliver value by bringing back the atmospheric, puzzle-heavy tension that the series is known for, but injecting it with fresh cultural and visual elements. The anticipation is high that it will use the PS5's capabilities to create an incredibly detailed, oppressive world, where the line between beauty and sickness is constantly blurred. And here's where it gets interesting. Moving the classic psychological themes to a new, richly textured setting could lead to the franchise's most visually unique and terrifying chapter. Silent Hill F represents the future of the series, a promise of deep, symbolic, and utterly unsettling horror that respects the franchise's legacy while innovating its visual language. It's an essential game for those who crave mature, atmospheric horror and anticipate the next evolution of a legendary franchise. While the first game was pure, grueling survival horror, The Evil Within 2 successfully shifts the balance toward a more action-oriented approach, blending grotesque creature design with a semi-open world structure for a high-octane horror experience. You are Sebastian Castellanos once again diving into the mental hellscape of Union to rescue your daughter, and this time, you have slightly more room to breathe, but no less fear. The core value comes from its sheer variety and scope. The game offers expansive, semi-open areas where resource management and stealth are crucial for survival, alongside classic claustrophobic corridors that ratchet up the tension. The combat feels more responsive and empowering than the first game, but the enemy variety, from the camera-headed Obscura to the horrifying spectacle of the Guardian, ensures that every encounter is deeply unsettling. You know that moment when you're sneaking past a group of horrific creatures and your heart is pounding, but you know you have the tools to fight back if necessary? That's the brilliant balance here. The Evil Within 2 is a strong final entry because it provides a satisfying, lengthy, and content-rich campaign that successfully merges action and survival horror. It's a rewarding experience for those who appreciate high-quality creature design, a compelling narrative about personal redemption, and a horror game that doesn't mind letting you fight back occasionally. So there you have it. 20 PS5 titles that prove horror isn't just about cheap thrills. It's about genuine innovation, deep atmosphere, and experiences that fundamentally rearrange your perception of the dark. Whether through groundbreaking technology like dual reality traversal, masterful retro aesthetics, or the simple brilliance of psychological torment, every single game on this list delivers maximum value for your time and your money. Which one of these nightmares are you most excited to endure? And what high-value horror title do you think absolutely needs to be on our next list? If you enjoyed this breakdown of true terror, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more content that pushes the limits, and check out the video on your screen right now. The lights are off, the headset is on, and the next great nightmare awaits.